Tesla slashed over 10% of its global workforce, around 14,000 jobs this spring, amid declining sales and cost cuts. What are the hidden consequences behind these headline figures? Tesla cut more than 10% of its global workforce, about 14,000 jobs, between April and May 2024. Reports indicate these layoffs spanned software, engineering, supercharger, and service teams. About 6,000 roles were cut in California and Texas alone, with 601 more from California planned in mid-June. These cuts hit U.S. workers hard. Many believed in Tesla as the pinnacle of American tech opportunity, only to see loyalty disregarded. Lost jobs mean lost income, benefits, and stability, raising fears that even top-tier tech careers offer no job security. Families must now navigate uncertain futures, scrambling for new employment in a shrinking tech job market. Many workers are forced to consider lower-paying jobs just to make ends meet, and entire communities feel the strain as spending decreases and local economies are impacted. Despite Tesla benefiting from tariffs, Tesla received lower import duties on parts after Trump's April 2025 executive order. Elon Musk offered no comment on the layoffs. Meanwhile, former President Trump, who implemented the tariff policies, remained silent on workers losing their jobs because of his measures. The silence of powerful figures leaves workers feeling abandoned. Politics and business collide, while the working class bears the burden. Empty promises of bringing jobs back ring hollow as livelihoods vanish. This growing disconnect between leaders and citizens fuels frustration and mistrust as everyday Americans struggle with unemployment. Many question whether their voices matter, creating anxiety and resentment that threatens social cohesion. Families once hopeful for protection now feel overlooked and unheard. Employees describe Tesla factories as meat grinders, citing intense workloads causing fainting, dehydration, and injuries from high-speed machinery. Numerous workers reported racial slurs. Over 100 complaints involved managers using derogatory language. Some dismissed workers weren't allowed to ride company shuttles, forced to walk miles to public transit. State-of-the-art electric vehicles stand on a foundation of suffering. Workers face physical harm, psychological trauma, and humiliation, all to keep production humming. This raises urgent questions about ethics in America's green tech push. Trump-era import tariffs have driven up U.S. food prices by 25 to 100% as of June 2025. Salmon, coffee, wine, olive oil, beef, tomatoes, all saw spikes. The auto industry lost up to $80 billion, and tens of thousands of jobs vanished. Tariffs on chips, rare earths, and auto parts disrupted global supply chains. In retaliation, Canada, Mexico, China, and the EU slapped high tariffs on American exports, making U.S. goods less competitive and worsening unemployment. Everyday costs are soaring. Groceries, fuel, electronics become luxury. Real wages shrink. Healthy meals wane as families cut costs. Workers in trade-exposed industries face layoffs. The American dream is under serious strain. Luxury car imports and steel tariffs are reshaping U.S. auto options this summer. What's behind these shifts, and how will they touch American drivers? Porsche has categorically stated it will not move any part of its production, including final assembly, to the United States, refuting recent Bloomberg speculation. A company spokesperson told Reuters, Porsche has no plans to shift any part of its production process to the U.S. With no U.S. production, all Porsche models imported to the U.S. continue to incur 25% tariffs on passenger vehicles, per the U.S. Department of Commerce, under 2025 import rules. This adds thousands of dollars per vehicle. As a result, American customers face higher prices, fewer available models, and local dealerships may struggle to stock current inventory, potentially affecting service networks and jobs tied to luxury imports. For enthusiasts, this means waiting longer for special orders, potentially missing out on limited editions, and feeling the pressure of higher financing costs. Even maintenance and spare parts could become more expensive, impacting ownership experience and satisfaction for U.S. Porsche fans. Mercedes-Benz CEO Ola Källenius has proposed a tariff offset mechanism, suggesting parity in import volumes between U.S. and EU-produced vehicles to avoid tariffs. He is reportedly in discussions with U.S. and EU officials, Bloomberg says. If accepted, this plan could stabilize prices for Mercedes and other European luxury cars in the U.S., preserving consumer choice and affordability. Failure could lead to import delays, price spikes, and potential withdrawal of high-end models, causing ripple effects through luxury dealerships and affecting their workforce. American consumers might also see fewer upgrades or new models each year, with automakers hesitating to invest in the U.S. market. For local mechanics and parts suppliers, fewer imports could mean less business, shrinking options for customers seeking repairs and customizations. Regional economies that benefit from luxury auto sales may experience reduced growth. Germany's Federal Statistical Office, Destatis, reports that exports to the U.S. fell 10.5% in April 2025, reaching 13.0 billion euros, the lowest since October 2024. Overall, German exports in April were 131.1 billion euros, down 1.7% month-on-month. This contraction in German steel, auto, and industrial exports is beginning to tighten supply chains. U.S. consumers may soon experience longer wait times for new and used European brand cars, as well as higher costs for repairs and auto parts reliant on imported components, impacting both buyers and small auto businesses. On June 5, 2025, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz met President Trump at the White House, agreeing to explore a long-term tariff offset and enhanced U.S.-EU trade cooperation. Their aim: reduce auto tariffs and bolster transatlantic manufacturing ties. Success here could bring steady vehicle pricing, broader selection of imported models, and job stability at U.S. plants tied to German brands. For American families and workers in the automotive sector, this may translate into economic certainty, maintained employment opportunities, and cheaper access to premium European vehicles. Canada's consumer market is undergoing a major change, as buyers quietly turn away from American products and services. What does this silent boycott mean for the future of U.S. businesses and cultural influence? After the tariff policies introduced by the Trump administration in 2025, Canadian consumers did not protest loudly, but responded with a decisive change in buying habits. According to a Bloomberg economics survey, over 66% of Canadians reported reducing their use of American products and services, while 70% favored domestic or European alternatives in Q2 2025. Major American brands such as Walmart, Starbucks, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and Amazon saw significant sales declines in Canada during this period. The drop in sales has forced many U.S. retail chains to cut jobs and close branches in Canada, directly affecting American workers in export, logistics, and international services. These changes ripple back to communities in the U.S. that depend on stable employment in companies tied to the Canadian market. McDonald's experienced its sharpest decline in customer visits since the COVID-19 pandemic, despite marketing efforts and menu updates. Many Canadian users have shared on Reddit and local news forums about canceling their Amazon Prime memberships as a form of protest, with several reporting successful account closures and refunds. This trend reflects a noticeable shift towards supporting local online platforms. like well.ca and regional stores, as Canadians vote with their wallets in response to recent U.S. trade policies. Nike reported a global sales drop of 9%, with Canada as the hardest hit market, as consumers shifted towards homegrown brands such as Vessi and Lululemon. Reduced revenue is forcing U.S. brands to scale down production, affecting factories, warehouses, and workers responsible for manufacturing, packaging, and supporting international markets. This contraction threatens livelihoods in American industrial sectors tied to exports. Companies like Coca-Cola have warned that tariffs and negative consumer sentiment in Canada could hurt sales. Harley-Davidson, facing a 25% tariff, saw Canadian sales drop 22%. Buyers opted for local brands like Triumph or Canadian electric motorcycles. Budweiser and KFC lost market share to Canadian beer and fast food chains such as Steam Whistle and St. Hubert. Beyond economic losses, this consumer boycott undermines American soft power. The cultural influence embodied by iconic brands and the American lifestyle is weakening in what was once a close allies market. This signals a broader challenge to U.S. international image and cultural ties. Top Canadian universities like UBC, Toronto, and McGill are reporting increased website visits from U.S. students exploring options to study in Canada. This shift stems from feelings of alienation, concerns over rising U.S. education costs, and a desire for a more respectful academic environment. The U.S. international education sector faces multi-billion-dollar losses in tuition revenue, straining university budgets and reducing employment opportunities for faculty and staff. This trend also diminishes America's global educational standing and influence among international students. The ongoing trade war is placing significant strain on U.S. farmers as agricultural exports decline sharply and production costs rise. Can America's agricultural sector withstand this mounting pressure? Between March and May 2025, the Trump administration's new tariff rounds placed U.S. agricultural products in jeopardy. China, Mexico, and Canada, the three largest export markets for American agriculture, responded by canceling orders and imposing high tariffs on corn, soybeans, beef, dairy, and fruit. Although several federal court rulings temporarily blocked portions of these tariffs, the damage is already evident. Declining revenues, canceled export contracts, and domestic price crashes due to oversupply. Millions of American farmers now face the risk of losing their livelihoods, particularly those who do not qualify for emergency relief programs. Consumers may also experience rising food prices as supply contracts, while farmers struggle with lower incomes and mounting financial pressure. Despite reaching a temporary agreement to reduce tariffs, China has maintained a 10% duty on U.S. soybeans, while Brazilian soybeans remain exempt. As a result, China, by far the world's largest soybean market, now sources 70% of its soybeans from Brazil. U.S. soybean exports are projected to fall by as much as 300 million bushels in 2025, a drop of over 20%. Losing its position as a primary supplier to China affects not only trade volumes, but also the broader supply chain, from farms to processing plants to exporters, raising production costs and eroding investor confidence in American agriculture. A sharp decline in soybean exports could reduce planting acreage and farmer incomes, weakening the rural economy and contributing to higher domestic food prices. Beyond crops, the livestock sector has been hit hard. China has canceled all contracts for high-value U.S. breeding stock, cattle, hogs, semen, and embryos, representing a multi-million-dollar market. At the same time, prices for fertilizer, pesticides, and herbicides have doubled due to anti-dumping tariffs on imports from China and India. A worsening labor shortage, particularly among immigrant workers, has left many farms without harvest crews, forcing hundreds of tons of produce to ROT in the fields. The result? significant waste and economic losses. Soaring production costs and labor shortages may lead to increased food prices, directly affecting everyday consumer expenses. As losses mount, many farmers hoped for federal assistance. However, in May 2025, the government announced a pause in agricultural support payments, along with budget cuts to rural education and climate programs specific to farming. Many producers voiced frustration that, despite complying with sustainable practices and legal export standards, they have received little support, leaving them feeling abandoned during a crisis. Major agricultural associations in the Midwest and Texas have issued a joint statement. "We don't need bailouts. We need a stable and reliable trade policy." Reducing support could diminish agricultural production, strain food supply chains, increase prices, and further undermine the rural economy. Former President Trump's new steel tariff has ignited a major shift in North American trade and defense relations. Could this be the beginning of a global supply chain realignment? On June 4, 2025, former U.S. President Donald Trump enacted a significant increase in tariffs on imported steel and aluminum, raising them from 25% to 50% via executive order. This move, aimed at bolstering domestic industries, particularly impacts Canada, the U.S.'s largest supplier of these metals. Canada supplies nearly half of U.S. aluminum imports and a substantial portion of steel, making it a critical partner in sectors like defense, automotive, and aerospace. The tariff hike has disrupted the integrated supply chains between the U.S. and Canada. American manufacturers, especially in the Midwest, are facing material shortages and increased costs. Industries dependent on Canadian metals are experiencing production delays, leading to potential job losses and higher consumer prices. Economists warn that the increased costs for raw materials are expected to hurt manufacturers and consumers by raising prices on a wide range of goods, from engines to beverage cans. In response to the U.S. tariffs, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced a strategic shift in foreign policy, emphasizing stronger ties with Europe. Canada has committed to joining the European Union's Readiness 2030 defense initiative, aiming to enhance military capabilities and reduce reliance on U.S. defense systems. Additionally, Canada is reevaluating its trade relationships, seeking to diversify its export markets and lessen economic dependence on the U.S. The U.S. risks losing not just a key trade partner, but also one of its closest defense allies. Canada's alignment with European defense and economic structures could diminish U.S. influence in North America and open opportunities for other global powers to strengthen ties with Canada. This realignment may lead to reduced access to Canadian resources and markets for American businesses, potentially impacting sectors ranging from energy to agriculture. The sudden tariff increase has sent shockwaves through U.S. industries reliant on Canadian metals. Manufacturers in states like Michigan, Ohio, and Missouri are reporting immediate challenges, including halted production lines and financial losses. Despite warnings from industry experts about the potential fallout, the tariffs were implemented without a comprehensive legal framework, leading to confusion and uncertainty. The disruption in supply chains is expected to have long-term economic consequences. Businesses may face prolonged recovery periods, increased operational costs, and the need to find alternative suppliers, which could result in higher prices for consumers and potential job cuts in affected industries. For instance, U.S. manufacturers currently meet only about 20% of domestic transformer demand, creating a critical dependency on imports. Lead times have expanded from weeks to 80 to 120 weeks for some equipment, causing project delays of 1 to 2 years in some cases. Major corporate shakeups and hefty tariffs are rattling U.S. industrial heartlands and consumer prices alike. Will thousands of job cuts and soaring steel prices push American families to the edge of a new economic crisis? General Electric will slash 12,000 jobs in its energy division worldwide. Workers, particularly in the Midwest and Northeast, face sudden layoffs, affecting families and local businesses. Tax revenues shrink, while social support costs rise, straining community services. These cuts hit regions already coping with industrial decline. Families lose income. Fewer local taxes lead to underfunded schools and public services. Communities must rely on unemployment and aid programs, stretching already limited resources. In towns where GE was a cornerstone employer, real estate values are dropping, and small businesses are closing due to reduced foot traffic and consumer spending. Entire local economies face cascading effects from this workforce reduction, with no quick path to recovery. The U.S. doubled steel and aluminum tariffs to 50%, effective June 4th. Domestic aluminum prices jumped by 54% Midwest premium, and hot-rolled coil steel climbed 7.4%. Canned food prices may rise 9 to 15%, or by 30 cents per can. Consumers face higher prices for cars, appliances, canned goods, and construction materials. Low and middle-income families will feel the pinch most during grocery shopping and household spending. Communities relying on manufacturing may bar business expansion or relocation due to cost uncertainty. Families planning home repairs or vehicle purchases are now postponing them. Construction jobs are being reevaluated or cut. Small manufacturers warn that profit margins are evaporating, forcing potential layoffs or even closures in already vulnerable rural regions. Tariffs will cost the typical household $3,800 a year. Car prices could increase by $2,000 to $4,000 per vehicle, squeezing middle-class budgets and diverting spending from other essentials. The US ISM manufacturing PMI fell to 48.5 in May, marking a third consecutive month of contraction. Companies like GM delayed investor briefings, and UPS plans to cut 20,000 jobs, citing tariff-driven cost pressures. Hiring freezes and layoffs make job markets unpredictable. Families delaying purchases weaken local economies. Consumer confidence drops, harming small businesses and eroding the social fabric of manufacturing towns. Experts caution that tariffs alone cannot revive U.S. industry. They urge long-term strategies, retraining workers, supporting innovation, and sustainable investment. GE and others are shifting production abroad, seeking stable costs and business climates. When companies leave, towns lose jobs, tax dollars, and identity. Workers without new skills face unemployment. Without a clear industrial roadmap, communities struggle to attract new firms or retrain displaced employees. America's auto industry is facing an unprecedented challenge as new car inventories hit record highs and consumers walk away from new vehicles. With dealerships struggling and car prices soaring, could this crisis permanently change how Americans think about car ownership? As of May 2025, U.S. new vehicle inventory has surged to over 2.84 million units, with an average 80-day supply for EVs, SUVs, and luxury models. It exceeds 100 days. Dealerships in Texas, Arizona, and Michigan are cutting staff, downsizing, or seeking foreign buyers, signaling a major industry shift. The sudden glut of unsold cars has left hundreds of thousands of dealership employees at risk of losing their jobs. Local communities are seeing a sharp drop in tax revenue and economic activity, putting public services and small businesses in jeopardy. For many towns that rely on auto sales as their economic lifeblood, this downturn means real hardship for families, workers, and local governments who are struggling to adapt to the new reality. In 2025, the average new pickup costs $54,000, up from $38,000 just 6 years ago. Auto loan rates now average nearly 10%, with some buyers paying 15 to 22% due to imperfect credit. A $24,000 loan on a $32,000 car can mean $650 monthly payments, more than many mortgages. As a result, Americans are keeping older vehicles, often with over 200,000 miles, to avoid unsustainable debt. With soaring prices and sky-high loan rates, millions of Americans are forced to drive aging, high-mileage cars. This trend brings more breakdowns, higher repair bills, and growing safety concerns. The stress of mounting financial pressure is eroding consumer confidence, especially among the middle class, who now feel shut out of the dream of new car ownership. Electric vehicles and luxury SUVs now comprise a growing share of the over 750,000 vehicles unsold for more than 100 days. Despite EV price cuts of up to 50%, buyers remain scarce. As they sit unused, batteries degrade, tires crack, and paint fades, turning them into liabilities for dealers and automakers. Major automakers like Ford, GM, and Stellantis have cut production by 35 to 40%, causing tens of thousands of layoffs. The rapid depreciation of new technology has shaken public trust in electric vehicles. Many Americans are now hesitant to embrace modern cars, fearing their investment will quickly lose value. The dream of a green automotive future feels more distant, while the risk of job loss in manufacturing communities has grown. As car makers cut orders, parts factories in Ohio, Michigan, and Tennessee are shutting down. Over 50,000 auto jobs have been lost in just 6 months, per Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal. The ripple effects reach banks, pension funds, credit unions, and school budgets. Entire communities, from teachers to grocery store owners, are being swept up in the crisis. As the auto industry's decline ripples through the local economy, small towns are losing their industrial identity and facing the prospect of long-term poverty. Job losses are undermining the stability of families and neighborhoods.